INFJs, let's be honest. How many times in your life have you wished you could just turn it all off? The endless emotional downloads, the constant sensing of hidden feelings in every room you enter, the unshakable awareness of tension, sadness, or anger radiating from people who aren't even speaking to you, the invisible weight of pain that doesn't belong to you but sits heavy on your chest anyway? How many times have you wished you could live the way other people seem to live, blissfully unaware, emotionally untuned, content with surface-level smiles and shallow conversations that don't burn them alive inside? Because for you, empathy isn't just something you do, it's something you are, a lens you can't remove, a constant undercurrent of your reality, and while it makes you profoundly capable of love and healing, it also leaves you drained, shattered, and questioning whether this gift is in fact more of a curse. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, not the romanticized, sugar-coated version of INFJ empathy that people love to glorify, but the raw, unfiltered, often brutal reality of why your empathy feels like both a gift and a curse, why it's the very thing that makes you powerful yet fragile, cherished yet exploited, seen yet misunderstood. So if you've ever wondered why your empathy doesn't feel like the blessing people say it is, if you've ever carried the emotional burdens of others until you collapsed in silence, if you've ever wished you could shut your heart down for just one day, this video is for you. Because these truths belong to you, and today, we're going to speak them out loud. 1. You don't just feel for people, you feel as them. Most people, when they describe empathy, mean that they can sympathize with someone's situation, maybe imagine what it feels like, maybe nod and say, I understand. But INFJs don't just imagine it, they become it. When someone is hurting, you don't just feel sorry for them, you actually absorb the pain into your own nervous system, almost as though the boundary between you and them doesn't exist. Their grief becomes your grief. Their rage pulses through your veins. Their anxiety twists your stomach as if it were your own. This level of empathy is shocking to outsiders because they don't understand how it's possible to literally merge with another's emotional reality. But for you, it's not optional, it happens instantly, automatically, and without permission. And here's the curse. Because you feel as them, not just for them, you carry emotions that don't belong to you, and often, you don't even realize it. You may wake up heavy with sadness only to later discover it's because your friend, across town, is suffering silently. You may feel exhausted after a party not because of your own energy, but because you've absorbed the tension of the entire room. This shocking depth of empathy makes you a healer, yes, but it also makes you a sponge for pain, and sometimes, INFJ, that sponge is soaked to the point of drowning. 2. You attract the broken because you carry healing energy. You've probably noticed this, how the lost, the wounded, the broken, and the misunderstood seem to find you without trying, as if there's a beacon in your soul that signals, this person will understand you, this person will carry you, this person will not judge you. And while this is one of the most beautiful aspects of INFJ empathy, it's also one of the most dangerous, because not everyone who comes to you comes for healing. Some come to take, to drain, to feed off your energy without ever intending to change or give anything in return. Your empathy acts like gravity, pulling people toward you, but too often those people are not ready to heal, they're not willing to confront their darkness, they just want you to hold it for them. And because you feel their pain so deeply, you can't say no, you take it in, you carry it, you bleed for them, until you're left broken yourself. The shocking truth is that your empathy makes you both a light and a target. You are a magnet for the wounded, but you are also vulnerable to being consumed by their wounds, and this paradox is what leaves you questioning if your gift is worth the destruction it brings. 3. You confuse people because you see beneath the mask. When most people interact, they engage with surface personas, the practiced smile, the polite tone, the casual small talk that keeps everything comfortable. But you, INFJ, cannot stop your empathy from piercing straight through the performance. You notice the flicker of sadness in the eyes of someone who insists they're fine. You hear the tremble in a voice pretending to be confident. You feel the anger behind a calm expression. And because your empathy bypasses the mask, people often feel exposed, unsettled, even defensive in your presence. This creates an odd dynamic. People want to be understood, yet when you actually understand them, they feel naked, vulnerable, and sometimes even afraid of how much you can see. And instead of thanking you for your insight, they may pull away, deny what you sense, or even resent you for revealing what they wanted hidden. The curse here is that your empathy makes people uncomfortable, even when your intention is love. You see the soul behind the mask, but not everyone wants to be seen, and that leaves you isolated, silenced, and wondering if maybe it would be easier to play along with the illusion. 4. You lose yourself in other people's emotions. Here's one of the hardest parts of being an empathic INFJ. Sometimes you don't know where you end and where other people begin. Because you absorb emotions so fully, it's not uncommon for you to feel things that you mistake as your own, only to later realize they weren't yours at all. You may spiral into sadness, believing you're depressed, when in reality you've just picked up someone else's grief. You may feel restless and anxious, thinking something's wrong in your life, only to discover you've been carrying the anxiety of a loved one all day. This blurring of boundaries is one of the most exhausting parts of empathy. It makes it difficult to ground yourself, to know your own emotional state, to separate your reality from the reality of others. And because of this, you often feel like you're losing yourself, drowning in an ocean of feelings with no shoreline in sight. The gift here is that you can experience the world through others in ways most people can't even fathom. The curse is that in doing so, you risk forgetting who you are. 5. You feel responsible for emotions that aren't yours. This is the crushing weight that INFJs carry, the belief that because you feel someone's pain, it must be your responsibility to fix it. When someone is sad, you feel compelled to make them smile. When someone is angry, you absorb the tension, trying to calm the storm. When someone is lost, you hold their hand, guiding them even when you're lost yourself. Your empathy doesn't just make you aware of emotions, it makes you feel accountable for them, as if your soul whispers, if you can feel it, you must heal it. And this belief drives you to overextend, overgive, over-sacrifice, until you're exhausted and empty. The heartbreaking truth is that not all pain can be fixed, not all people want to be healed, and not all emotions are yours to carry. But your empathy, in its fierce loyalty, convinces you otherwise, and this is why it often feels like a curse. 6. The silent weight of emotional absorption. There are days when you walk into a room, and without anyone speaking a single word, you feel the heaviness that lingers in the air. Someone had an argument before they arrived, another person is struggling with private grief, and yet another is holding back tears masked by forced laughter, and somehow, you sense all of it simultaneously. For most people, this would pass unnoticed. But for you, as an INFJ, it lands with the weight of reality itself, because your empathy doesn't just allow you to understand others' emotions, it makes you absorb them, wear them, and carry them as though they were your own. This ability is powerful in moments when someone desperately needs to be seen and validated, but it becomes a curse when your nervous system and emotional energy are constantly hijacked by external turmoil. It's as if you're wired with emotional antennas that never turn off, constantly scanning and pulling in information that your body then has to metabolize, leaving you drained long before anyone realizes the cost. What makes this even more complicated is that you often don't notice when it begins. It sneaks up on you, a subtle shift in your chest, a heaviness in your gut, a pressure in your mind that doesn't belong to you. And because your compassion runs so deep, you don't always stop to ask, is this mine? Instead, You try to solve, soothe, or support, carrying others' pain like it's your sacred duty. But behind closed doors, this can leave you exhausted to the point of breaking, because no human being is meant to process the emotions of an entire room. The dark truth is this: empathy without boundaries feels like drowning. And INFJs, more than any other type, struggle with this paradox. The same gift that connects you deeply to others can become the very thing that shatters you if you don't learn when to let go. 7. The guilt that chains you. One of the cruelest tricks of INFJ empathy is how guilt often follows in its wake. You sense when others are struggling, and you feel this almost divine responsibility to intervene, to heal, to offer what comfort you can. But when you cannot, when the problem is too big, when the person resists your help, or when you simply run out of strength, the guilt gnaws at you like a relentless whisper. It tells you that you should have tried harder, that you should have seen more clearly, that you should have been enough to prevent someone else's suffering. And while you logically know that no single human can bear the burden of saving everyone, emotionally, you can't help but carry that self-blame. This is where empathy transforms from a light into chains, binding you to the impossible expectation that you should heal wounds you never caused. Think about the times you've stayed up at night replaying conversations, wondering if you missed something important, or if you could have said the one magical phrase that might have changed someone's path. That isn't just caring. That's a form of internal imprisonment, where your heart holds you hostage with the belief that others' suffering is somehow your responsibility. The truth is, your empathy isn't meant to fix the world. It's meant to remind people that they aren't alone in their pain. But until you internalize that distinction, your empathy will feel like both a crown and a curse, granting you the ability to love deeply, but chaining you with guilt whenever you reach the limits of what one human soul can carry. 8. The loneliness of being too attuned. People assume that empathy always leads to connection, but for INFJs, it often leads to isolation. Why? Because when you see and feel so much, you become painfully aware of things that others ignore, suppress, or simply don't care about. You see the hypocrisy in someone's words, the tension hidden beneath their smile, the patterns of manipulation in relationships that others dismiss as normal. And here's the haunting part. Once you see these truths, you can't unsee them. This creates a gap between you and the world around you. While others bond over surface-level conversations, you're silently drowning in the deeper currents of truth that no one acknowledges. While people laugh, you notice the cracks in their laughter. While they engage in small talk, you sense their despair beneath the mask. This makes you feel both connected to everyone and alienated from everyone at the same time. You know too much to be fully comfortable in ignorance, but your awareness often makes others uncomfortable, leading them to distance themselves from you. So even as your empathy draws you closer to people's inner worlds, it paradoxically pushes you away from them in reality, leaving you in that strange state of being surrounded by people yet utterly alone. This is where INFJs learn one of life's hardest truths: empathy doesn't always bring closeness. Sometimes, it creates distance, because not everyone wants to be seen as deeply as you see them. And this loneliness, this exile of the soul, is one of the greatest curses of an empathetic heart. 9. The manipulator's playground. Here's something few people will admit out loud: empathy makes you a target. Your compassionate heart, your willingness to listen, your desire to help, these qualities shine like a beacon to those who thrive on taking advantage of others. Manipulators, narcissists, and energy vampires sense your giving nature and see it as an opportunity, not a gift. Because you feel so deeply, you often want to give people the benefit of the doubt, to see the wounded child behind their toxic behavior, to extend patience when others would walk away. But this makes you vulnerable. It makes you stay in situations longer than you should, offering compassion to those who never intend to change, and giving energy to those who only take. And here's the devastating irony. While your empathy allows you to see the good in people, it can also blind you to the danger in them. You see potential where there is none, promise where there is only harm, and by the time you realize the truth, you've already been drained, used, or broken. This is one of the darkest curses of empathy, the way it paints a target on your back. The very gift that allows you to heal the broken also exposes you to being broken by those who see your compassion not as a light, but as a resource to exploit. 10. The internal war between empathy and self-preservation. Perhaps the deepest curse of empathy lies in the war it creates within you. On one side is your instinct to reach out, to feel, to help, to carry others' burdens. On the other side is the desperate need to protect your own mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. These two forces pull at you constantly, leaving you in a state of inner conflict that never fully resolves. You may retreat into solitude to recover, but then you feel guilty for abandoning others. You may pour yourself into helping, but then you collapse under the weight of exhaustion. You're always walking a tightrope, trying to balance compassion for others with compassion for yourself, and every misstep feels like betrayal, either of your heart or your own survival. This is where INFJs often struggle the most. Because your empathy isn't just a skill you can turn off, it's part of who you are. Ignoring it feels like self-betrayal. But honoring it without boundaries feels like self-destruction. And so you live in this constant internal war, forever negotiating between your need to give and your right to protect yourself. This war doesn't have easy answers. It's not about choosing empathy or self-preservation, it's about learning that the two can coexist. But until you reach that hard-won wisdom, your empathy will always feel like both your superpower and your curse, leaving you torn in ways no one else can fully understand. 11. The trauma of carrying generational pain. INFJs often find themselves absorbing not only the emotions of individuals, but also the unspoken grief of families, cultures, and even generations. You sit with someone, and suddenly you feel the echoes of old wounds that were passed down long before they were even born. You see the patterns, the cycles, the inherited pain that shapes them, and you can't help but carry some of it yourself. This isn't just empathy, it's a kind of spiritual burden, where you feel like you're holding pieces of pain that were never yours to begin with. And the cruel irony is that most people don't even recognize these invisible chains, yet you're already bearing the weight of them, aching under the sorrow of generations that never healed. This curse is particularly heavy because you don't just see the pain, you see the potential for healing. But often, the people who carry these wounds aren't ready to face them, leaving you with the haunting knowledge of what could be healed but remains unresolved. 12. The exhaustion of playing everyone's anchor. There's a reason INFJs are often the ones people turn to when life collapses. You have a natural calm, a stabilizing energy, a way of grounding others in their chaos. People feel safe spilling their darkest truths in your presence because your empathy creates a container where judgment disappears. But what they don't see is the cost. Every time you anchor someone, you expend emotional energy, and while they walk away lighter, you are left heavier. You've taken in their storm so they could feel peace, but now the storm rages inside you. And because you rarely want to burden others with your struggles, you quietly bear it alone. This creates a cycle of depletion, where your empathy makes you the anchor for everyone else but leaves you without an anchor of your own. Over time, this leads to emotional exhaustion so deep it borders on despair, the kind of exhaustion that makes you question if your gift is worth the endless cost it demands. 13. The illusion of being understood. One of the most painful curses of empathy is the way it tricks you into believing that if you can see others so clearly, surely someone will eventually see you. You spend years giving, listening, healing, and understanding, hoping that one day, someone will mirror that same depth back to you. But more often than not, that moment never comes. Instead, you find yourself surrounded by people who are grateful for your understanding but unable to reciprocate it. They take your empathy as a given, but rarely pause to wonder about the storms you face, the burdens you carry, or the weight of always being the one who sees. This illusion, that someone will one day understand you as deeply as you understand them, is perhaps the most heartbreaking part of the INFJ experience. Because while you long for that rare soul connection, your empathy often places you in relationships where you give endlessly but remain unseen. 14. The transformation of pain into purpose. And yet, with all these curses, with all this heaviness, there is a final truth that cannot be denied. Empathy, even when it feels like a curse, is also the very thing that allows you to turn pain into purpose. Every burden you've carried, every sleepless night replaying conversations, every moment of loneliness and exhaustion, all of it becomes fuel for a deeper mission. You don't just feel empathy, you embody it. And while it breaks you at times, it also shapes you into someone who can offer a kind of presence the world desperately needs. Because you've felt so much, you can guide others with wisdom. Because you've carried so much, you can teach others about strength. Because you've been broken, you can help others find healing. This is the paradox of empathy. It curses you with wounds that never fully fade, but it blesses you with the power to transform those wounds into something meaningful, something that leaves a mark on the world. So, INFJ, if you've ever wondered why your empathy feels like a curse as much as a gift, know this. You are not weak for feeling so deeply. You are not wrong for carrying so much. You are not broken for struggling with the very gift that defines you. You are human, exquisitely human, with a heart that was built differently, a heart that suffers deeply but also loves fiercely, a heart that breaks often but also heals others in ways they will never forget. Your empathy is both your cross and your crown. And while the world may never fully understand the cost you pay, the truth is this: your presence, your compassion, your ability to see and feel so deeply, these are not accidents. They are the quiet revolutions that change lives every day. And that, dear INFJ, is the reason why your empathy, no matter how heavy it feels, will always be more than just a curse. It will always be the gift that sets you apart.